Since when is Tyrod Taylor a quarterback worth sticking up for? Well, when annoyingly boring analysts want to bring racism into the conversation, that's when. Baker Mayfield grabs his crotch and I love it. I'll explain. Denver fires a coach, and it's not Vance Joseph. UCLA fires a coach, and it is Jim Mora. What took them so long? We'll update the college football playoff race and the latest from the NFL ranks as OFN Week in Review on the Ourlads Football Radio Network starts now. Is it transmissions was you now try to push, try to keep us all down and hope that we will never see. All right, thanks for tuning in to Ourlads Football Weekend Review. November the 20th, it's a Monday, 2017. Couple more weeks to go, and then we really start talking college football playoffs around here. Never too early, though. Lot to go over in college football and the NFL. Monday Night Football tonight, Atlanta and Seattle. That game was close to a pick'em. You know, I mean, if anybody watched the Falcons play this year, I understand Seattle's got some issues. I get it. Cam Chancellor's out and Richard Sherman. Okay, I get that. I'm not ignoring that. Those are two big losses. Seattle will not win a Super Bowl this year. I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree with my NFL co-host on Thursdays, Tony Mejia. By the way, no Thursday show this week with Thanksgiving, so Tony and I will preview Week 12 in the NFL on Friday, and I will preview Week 13 in college football on Wednesday. Of course, we've got the Thanksgiving. Actually, there's only one game, I believe, on Thanksgiving this week in college. I think that's the Mississippi State game. Is that what that is? Yeah. And I'm glad. I like it when Ole Miss and Mississippi State play Thanksgiving night. They should play Thanksgiving night every year. Either that matchup, or we should have Texas Tech. Because they always play around Thanksgiving. But Texas Tech's on Friday night this year, so I'm okay with those rivalries on Thanksgiving night. Of course, I'll be watching. I'd rather watch that game than the Giants and the Redskins. I'll tell you that much. But getting back to Seattle, yeah, I mean, look, they're not going to win the Super Bowl. They just can't. Those are two major players for them. Sherman and Chancellor. I mean, you've got Wagner. Look, Bennett's a real good player, but they can win without him. All right? They got Wagner, Sherman, Thomas, and Chancellor, and Bennett. You lose, and I know I said Bennett. You can lose it. You can win without him, only because of the fact that, he is not a dominant player. He's a very good player. But he's not a difference maker, okay? And now, if you lost Bennett and another player, well, let's say you lost Bennett and Wagner instead of Sherman and Chancellor, I'd say the same thing. I'd say that you're not going to win. But but specifically taking two guys out of that secondary, which is so important for Seattle, because of the fact that they aren't dominating up front like they were a few years ago. I mean, a few years ago, the reason why there was such a great secondary as well as, great defense in general is because they were really good all over. They had a lot of depth along the front seven defensive line, and then they had that secondary. But now, look, they still have. I get it. You still have Wagner, you still got Bennett, and you still have Thomas. Those are good players, which is the whole reason I like them tonight. Okay, don't get me wrong. They're still winning the West. They're still going to the postseason. I don't think they're going to win the West, though. I will say that. I'm not going to say it's a gimme that they're not going to, though. I mean, as much as I like the Rams and have since the first couple of weeks of the season, fact is, they did lose to Seattle when they played. That was like the worst performance they played all year. And think about this. Really, the two bad performances that they've played offensively this year have been against two of the better defenses they played. Seattle in that game, and then the game yesterday for the Rams in Minnesota, which is why we liked Minnesota in that game, which is why I really didn't like the line at all. Didn't understand why Minnesota wasn't at least a 3-point home favorite. Didn't show any respect. And enough of this Case Keenum stuff, please. Can we please put that to bed? So, but winning a Super Bowl is one thing. Beating Atlanta on Monday night is another. And like I said from the start, has anybody watched Atlanta play this year? Did you see Philadelphia destroy Dallas yesterday? All right. So are we supposed to take anything from that Atlanta win? Remember when the game was over, what did I say about the win? Okay, nice win, but it wasn't like the offense was awesome. Even though they had no Sean Lee, by the way, Dallas. And look what Philly did. Look how many yards Philly ran for in the game. What would Coleman had like 80 yards rushing? Philly had like 200 yards rushing in the game. Okay, so it wasn't like Atlanta's offense was like destroying Dallas, and the defense destroyed them because hey, you take out Elliott and you take out Smith, this is what you get. Eagles did the same thing. So I don't, and it's not like the Eagles have been doing that to everybody. Their defense has been solid, but their defense hasn't been. They're not where they are because of their defense. Defense has been solid, but the Eagles are where they are right now because of their offense. Their offensive line is awesome, and Carson Wentz is awesome. That's the NFL. You have an awesome quarterback, and you get good coaching, good defense, good running game, very good offensive line. Man, you're winning a ton of games with that scenario. But Atlanta, I'm sorry. I'm not buying in to this Atlanta thing just yet. Okay? Is it nice that they've won 2 out of 3, including one win over the Jets? Yeah, it is. Beat Seattle. Make it for real. Okay? And because there's still Russell Wilson, I would, and by the way, the injuries for Seattle are not on offense. Now I know Dwayne Brown has to get acclimated. He's still a little banged up as well. I kind of get that, but that's not what the problem is with Seattle. Okay, it's a couple guys on defense, and so all right. Well, should Atlanta take advantage? And should Julio Jones put up 200 yards receiving? He could, but is that going to be the game? I don't think so. Look at what happened with Houston a few weeks ago in Deshaun Watson's last game. That's what I think what we could see tonight. I could see this game being like 35-30 or something like that. But I love taking Seattle when they're at home, especially, and it's on national TV, and they're not getting respected. See, normally when you get to see Seattle on Monday Night Football or in these situations like this, it's when they're 7-8 point favorite and they're supposed to do this and they're supposed to do that. Well, they're not supposed to do anything. They're basically almost like a dog here because they're barely a favorite at home. So, yeah, I really like Seattle tonight. All right, now the whole Tyrod Taylor thing is already kind of goofy to me. This whole look, we haven't talked a whole lot about it this year, the whole Ezekiel Elliott nonsense and everything else with the protesting the national anthem because it's not sports. I'm sorry, it's just not. And I actually do think the thing is kind of goofy. I think society in general, if you don't think society's goofy, then you're not paying attention. So I think it's goofy. And I do not see there's no reason to get upset over it. It's easy to get upset over it. Easy. To get into arguments and debates with your significant other, especially your debate other. This is my point. Oh, that's my point. Okay, maybe you need to get it out or something. I don't know. But not on a sports show. Okay? So, I guess is it a shock that we have to hear some of the writers and TV analysts come out and say that the whole reason that Tyrod Taylor was benched in the first place had to do with his race? Seriously? Tyrod Taylor? And Donovan McNabb, really? Donovan McNabb? I don't even know. See, this is the thing about when these networks, they wonder, like ESPN, why they lose money. Let me tell you why ESPN loses money. It's not all because of politics. See, the politic side is like the last straw of how you lose people. It's the content. We've been saying this for years on this network that I don't pay attention to ESPN anymore, except I go to ESPN now for several things. If I didn't have a show, and a network to run, and I wasn't in the industry, in the media, the only reason that I would ever turn on ESPN is for the sports. That's it. Now, when I do watch ESPN now and listen to some shows, it's because I have to report on what's going on. What are people saying? Just like I am right now with Tyrod Taylor. That's it. I'm not saying that every single person on ESPN or on television doesn't know what they're saying. I'm not. I never say everybody. Whenever I mention people in the media and talk about things that I've said before, people who talk writers who come out of college and I don't know what to do. What do I want to become now that I'm going to be a writer? Oh, I kind of like sports. I'm going to become a sports writer. Then they're a sports writer. And even though they really don't know football, but hey, you know what? I kind of like it. And they're good writers. Then they get into it. And then all of a sudden they want to be experts just because they're kind of like sports, but they're really good writers. And that kind of makes them an expert, right? So what I've said before with writers like that or with analysts, especially the ones that are former athletes, is I never say all of them. I say most of them. Okay, it doesn't. So if there's an analyst out there or a writer out there that's offended, well, I don't know. What are you being offended for? You feel insecure about your abilities? Did I say it was you? I didn't say everybody. Okay. There's a percentage, and there's a lot of them out there. There's thousands of them out there. So that means there are, I don't know. I don't even know what the number would be. Let's just say if there were 5,000. Maybe there's 50 that know what they're talking about. All right. So, but this is the point is you get a guy like Donovan McNabb because he's remember I referenced this before after McNabb played in that Eagle game. I think it was the Bengal game. When after the game, Donovan McNabb, it was the overtime tie, and Donovan McNabb admitted that he had no idea an NFL game ended in a tie. He wasn't joking. He was for real. Okay? So I like to use that as proof a lot when former athletes, okay? Now here's a couple things. I find it humorous when former athletes want become broadcasters, something that people like me and others work their whole lives for. They spend years developing the trade. So the athletes want to come in and be analysts, and they criticize, say, us because we never play the game. But then they take over broadcasting media jobs, something they've never done, and that's okay. And then you go, okay, well, if you're going to do the job, do it right. In other words, talk about stuff that will make us smarter, the audience smarter, because that's the whole reason you're being hired, or at least that's the reason you should be hired. Now, when this, by the way, is going to come to an end soon. I've said this as well over the last few years, and I think you're starting to see that. Sooner or later, might take another 5 or 10 years, the networks are no longer going to blindly say every single analyst has to be a former player. Because just because you're a former player doesn't mean that that makes you a good analyst. And the same thing, whether or not it makes you, and I'm talking about in-game analyst or studio analyst. See, Donovan and what is the thing I always say too? Part of it is because they're lazy. Because they think that they played the game, because they did play the game, but they think that because they played the game, that they don't have to put in the work. I'm being hired because I played the game, so I know. So I'm going to come in, walk into the studio, a topic's going to pop up. I'm going to maybe look at, I'm going to go on the internet for a few minutes before the show. You tell me what the topic is, and I'll be ready. Because that's what McNabb did today. Because he had the you know what to reference Tyrod Taylor's game against the Jets as a good game. That's what he referenced. And you know why he referenced it? Because of the numbers, he said. You see the numbers in the Jet game? Why is he being benched? Well, maybe, Donovan, did you watch the game? I know it's your job, but chances are you didn't watch the game. Because if you did, you wouldn't have said, look at the numbers. And since you are an analyst and a former quarterback that is that's getting paid to do this for a living, you should be watching every freaking game, even as boring as a Jet Build game might seem to you. But that's your job. That's what you're being paid for. It's like movie critics. Movie critics have to watch every freaking movie, okay, that they're assigned to, even if they think it's the boringest, stupidest, most ridiculous movie they ever would have. They would never see this movie, but that's what they're being paid for. It's like, somebody was saying, what was it? It was yesterday, the pregame on NBC for the NFL game. And I think it was Peter King had this piece on Jason Witten and talking about Jason Witten spent 7 hours on an off day getting ready to get in shape, to stay in shape because he's old, and big story about it. It's like, what's the big story? What do you mean off day? Yeah, he's right, Jason Witten. What do you mean off day? Off day for what? Jason Witten has made millions of dollars in his career. You know why? Because he's got to stay in shape. So when you have to stay in shape and you're an athlete, you don't have days off, especially when you get older. Because that's the whole idea of making money and being fit enough, especially at that age. So is it, I don't know, is it, I guess, is it admirable? Okay, maybe it's admirable. He could retire and all that, or I don't know, but why is it a story? What's the story? That an athlete is spending 7 hours preparing to play football. Yeah, what else is he supposed to do? You're telling me that if someone wanted to pay me millions of dollars to play football, I wouldn't spend 7 hours a day preparing? I mean, it's like actors and actresses. Do you think the reason that they're in the shape that they're in, especially the best ones, are in the shape that they're in because they just, for the fun of it? That's work. Now, some of them enjoy it, but some of them, that's work. They have to put in the hours to look good. Why do you think the ones that are on TV that get paid make all that money? Okay, once they get those opportunities, then the better ones realize, oh, if I'm going to keep these jobs, I better keep looking good. Take my shirt off. I better look good. See, we don't have to. It's nice. We want to stay in shape. We want to look good, but we don't have to. That's what we're getting paid for. That's what they're getting paid for. So with McNabb, you take a look at the situation. What is he getting paid for? What he's getting paid for is to watch those games, not to reference and go, oh, look, Tyrod Taylor's 29 of 40 for 285 and 2 touchdowns. That looks like a good game to me. Why is he being benched? Look at Peterman, 5 interceptions. That's not good. I look, 5 interceptions. I see this for Taylor against the Jets a couple weeks ago. Why is Taylor not playing? Racism. That's what it's got to be, racism. When anybody that watched that Buffalo Jet game knows how bad Taylor played in that game, they know that not only in that game, but do you realize that only 2 games this entire season has Tyrod Taylor thrown for over 225 yards? Everybody knows that Tyrod Taylor. Look, I said this. I was shocked when Tyrod Taylor actually started to perform well in Buffalo. Well enough that he was actually. Remember, see, and I forget who it was. No, I don't forget, but you had the First Take duo on there criticizing also with McNabb the fact that black quarterbacks don't get the opportunity that white quarterbacks do. I'm trying to remember. I could have sworn Tyrod Taylor got some sort of like I know it wasn't like legit, but I could have sworn he got a $90 million contract. Could have sworn he did. Tyrod Taylor, a guy who runs around for a living, got a $90 million contract or something along those lines. Tyrod Taylor, who overplayed himself in my mind. I mean, what he was able to make financially, no matter what it is, when it's all said and done, as a quarterback in the NFL, Tyrod Taylor should be applauded. He went over the extra. It's amazing how much he overachieved, and him overachieving, which should be applauded. Instead, we're not applauding it. Instead, we're criticizing when a new regime comes into Buffalo and then they're like, look, I wasn't the one who gave this guy all this money. I wasn't the one who decided he was going to be our guy. He was the quarterback when I got here. I draft Peterman. He's the only guy that is my quarterback. I get rid of Cardell Jones. and I go, okay, well, this is what I got. But then I'm going to trade Watkins. I'm going to trade this guy and that guy, and I'm going to accumulate all these draft picks because I know that Tyrod Taylor is not a starting quarterback that's going to lead you at a Super Bowl. So I am going to do what I can to make sure that next season, when the draft comes, I've got more ammunition. And we said this as soon as he made the deal for Watkins, and we talked about their draft picks, and it's still true today. No team is better equipped to land the top quarterback in the draft than the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills can outtrade anybody for that first pick. So if, let's say, San Francisco gets the first pick and the 49ers are sitting there, and which is looking like it's going to be Cleveland, I get that. But let's just say San Francisco because they have Garoppolo and they want to trade the pick. And they pick up the phone and well they did, they're going to get calls, but let's just say they're going to make a call. Who do you think they're going to call first if they had to make a call? They're going to call the Bills because the Bills have all this ammunition. Nobody can make the moves that the Bills can trade wise to come up and get that pick. Nobody. So the Bills are already, they were saying this while they were winning. Remember we said this at the beginning of the season while they were winning, we were looking at their roster. And again, look, this is no criticism on Taylor too, because they had the receiver injuries and Watkins getting traded and Woods gone, and they had all this personnel changes. Taylor didn't have anybody to throw to. Even though when we have seen enough of Taylor over the last couple of years to know his limitations, but once you take away some of those players as well, some of his skill talent, then his weaknesses really come into position. So it was so obvious, but still we were looking to go, how are they doing it? How are they winning? But the defense was actually winning games. The defense was winning games. We're running the football a little bit, but really it was smoke and mirrors. He'd break down, like Tyler Taylor would run around for a couple of plays and he'd hit Charles Clay a couple of times, and that would be good enough, and the defense would create turnovers, and they'd squeak by and win some games, and we'd sit there and go, how are they winning these games? But the Bills are smart enough to realize that too. Okay. And those are the smart people. The smart people are the ones that while you're winning, okay, you can figure out that we don't really have what we need here. And now, is Nathan Peterman the answer? Probably not. And they know that. But we've talked a lot about Peterman before. We told you we thought it was a very good pick in the middle rounds. This is a guy that could be around for a while. Look, if Beathard can start in San Francisco for a few games and get a chance, then Peterman deserves the same chance in Buffalo. What's the difference? There's only one difference. The Bills are still mathematically alive for the playoffs. That's the only difference. That's why I commend Buffalo, because they're not stupid enough to think that they're actually going to do anything. So they're not going to go, well, because we're still, it's like the Jets. Oh, well, we're still kind of hanging around the playoffs. Even though I know that the one difference is, and I think it is significant, is that you just don't know. I mean, Todd Bowles doesn't know if he's going to be back next year. But this is why I've said before that it's up to Maccagnan and it's up to the Jets regime to have these conversations with the head coach and to let him know that, hey, you don't have to go with McCown. And if you go with the younger quarterbacks, we're not going to hold it against you. Because if the organization doesn't say that, and Bowles is thinking, oh, I got to win like 7 games, and if I don't win, and if I start the young kids and we start losing these bad, ugly games, it's going to reflect bad on me. Well, that's not Bowles' fault. That's the management's fault. Okay, so I do hold the Jet management to blame just as much as Bowles for making that decision. See, for McDermott, he comes in and he's like, look, because he knows he's got control here. He just got there, so this is what he's going to do. And he's saying to himself, look, I don't know what I got here in Peterman, so let me play him. Let me see what I got there. You never know. Maybe he looks good enough where I actually say, hey, wait a second. Maybe I can win with this kid. Maybe I don't have to trade the farm, 500 assets to move up and get a guy, get one guy. So maybe Peterman, maybe I could work with this guy for another year. Maybe I could sit where I am in the draft and let Mason Rudolph land on my lap or Baker Mayfield. I didn't have to try to move up to get Josh Rosen or something like that. Let's evaluate. That's what smart people do. So, all right, he has a bad game. Yes, maybe a historic bad game, but he had a bad game. For people to criticize like this and call it racism is disgusting. All right, it's so bad And it is boring. It's boring and it's disgusting. Because has anybody looked at Deshaun Kaiser lately? Has anybody looked at Brett Hundley lately? Why is Kaiser playing? Hey, they got this kid Hogan from Stanford. He's a white boy. Why don't you just play Hogan over Kaiser? Seriously, I mean, Kaiser's terrible. I mean, Kaiser wasn't even a first round draft pick. You want to know why Cleveland is losing and can't even win a game? Is because Kaiser was so bad at the combine and so bad in general with his mechanics and everything that he could have drafted a bit less than the third or fourth round. Nobody would have been surprised. And the kid's starting for Cleveland. So not only is he not even prepared to play in the NFL, there's no way he should have started. I said all along they should have started Cody Kessler from week one. Now, I have no idea if Cody Kessler probably not going to be a starter, but how do I know Cody Kessler can't be a good backup in this league? If he would have started from day one, then maybe Cody Kessler could have amounted to something by now, and maybe they would have won a game or two. But I guess they want, and still, I at some point I understand wanting to see a kid. But to throw Deshaun Kaiser in there from day one was never going to work. And and at this point in time, I mean, look, does anybody ever think that he's going to win a game? If he does, I mean, I don't even know who they're going to have to beat. And look at Hundley. I said right off the bat with Hundley, I told you what he is. And I didn't buy the Chicago game either, I told you. So that's one game. Let's not get carried away. And sure enough, look at it. All right, so Hundley shouldn't be starting. Kaiser shouldn't be starting, but they're starting. There's other guys backing up these quarterbacks, but they're starting. And you know what? They ain't white. They're getting a shot. So enough with the nonsense, okay? Because unless you have a specific quarterback in mind, like you want to say, yeah, there's so-and-so black quarterback who's 33 years old, he was good enough to start, but yeah, for some reason they're starting Ryan Fitzpatrick or Josh McCown. They could have been starting him. Okay, well, who? Who are you talking about? And I don't want to talk about development of players anyway, because we're going to have to go back, 10, 15, 20 years to when these kids were quarterbacks in high school and college. This is a completely different time. A completely different time. And I just don't. I'm sorry. I just don't think there's a reasonable way to compare the situation today with quarterbacks to why there aren't 30-something-year-old black quarterbacks that are given shots the way quarterbacks like Josh McCown and Ryan Fitzpatrick are. It's just now if you want to say the same thing 10 or 15 years from now, I'm okay with that. As long as we see quarterbacks coming out. You show me a quarterback that's coming out. Show me. Because you're trying to tell me in today's day and age that you actually think that there are college head coaches or even high school head coaches that aren't going to start black quarterbacks? I mean, seriously. We're not even going to go down that road, are we? We have a hard enough time with white quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are pretty bad generally, no matter what their race are. So if there's, look at Deshaun Watson. See, they want to compare Trubisky and Watson. All of a sudden, don't you find it interesting? All of a sudden, Deshaun Watson plays the way I told you he was going to play, even though we all didn't think he'd play this good, this fast. But I told you, I said it for months. I said Deshaun Watson was the real deal. He was going to be a great player. I told you that if the Jets were going to draft a quarterback, that I'd want Deshaun Watson. It's the only guy I want. Of course, you get the New York press. They got to read articles about all the Mike McCagnon let Deshaun Watson get away. It's like, yeah. It's like everybody let Dak Prescott get away and Tom Brady get away. And yeah, did you notice that the Patriots didn't take him to the 6th round? Well, does that mean that they didn't let him get away just because they took him in the 6th round? 100 times. What was it? How many hundreds of picks were taken before him that the Patriots could have got another team could have picked them? That doesn't mean the Patriots were some smart organization. It's just ridiculous. So all of a sudden now, Everybody wants to point at Deshaun Watson. They didn't listen to me when I was telling you how great he was. But now all of a sudden, everybody wants to compare to Deshaun Watson. And how can Deshaun Watson get drafted? Did anybody say this? Did anybody criticize the whole situation with quarterback? I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anybody saying at the time of the draft that Deshaun Watson should have been taken ahead of Mitch Trubisky because the only reason he didn't is because he's black. Where did any of that ever come into the equation at draft time? It didn't. And the reason was, and it was a perfectly normal explanation of why Mitch Trubisky was taken ahead of Deshaun Watson. And I'm gonna go ahead and Mitch Trubisky, all right. If you take a look at the biggest difference between the two, and I don't even have to. I don't actually need any like specific stats, but the main thing that everybody, including of course Dan Shanka from Ourlads, said is Deshaun Watson was not as consistent. Trubisky was a much more a much better passer. He was more his ability to hit the receiver exactly where you want the receiver to catch passes. Trubisky, and this goes for any quarterback, and anybody that scouts quarterbacks for a living knows that the quarterback that is more consistent in his delivery, in his mechanics, has a higher completion percentage, can get the ball where you need it to go, is always going to get drafted ahead of the other guy. Now, if the other guy 6'5" with a howitzer, maybe not. But Deshaun Watson wasn't some 6'5" mega quarterback with a howitzer to compare against Trubisky. Matter of fact, they were both, they were both about the same height and the same weight. But the reason Trubisky went over Watson, now I didn't agree with it. You know that. I'm just telling you. Matter of fact, Shanka had Trubisky rated ahead of Deshaun Watson as well. Was because Trubisky was a type of quarterback that had great accuracy. He was somebody that had the ability, time in and time out, to get the ball where you wanted the ball to get to when you're a coach. Throw the ball there. Do it, 9 out of 10 times, 89 out of 90. See, Watson was all over the place at times. We saw that from games last year. Remember the game that they lost to Nathan Peterman, of all quarterbacks, the Pitt quarterback, who's the backup of Buffalo, who just started and threw 5 interceptions. Who beat Deshaun Watson? Nathan Peterman and Pitt did. Nathan Peterman quarterbacked the only team to beat Clemson last year, and did it in Clemson. But I guess it's because he's white. Because Watson would have those games. Watson was, but see, I saw through that. I said it for months that Deshaun Watson is the type of player that is just always going to be better when he needs to be better. That he's going to almost subconsciously be bored in situations where he doesn't have to play well or at his best. And when you are that type of player, see, for scouts, it's very difficult because they don't know, because more often than not, players that are like that aren't going to be successful in the NFL. And a lot of scouts aren't going to, and GMs, they're not going to risk themselves on a player that, a lot of them probably felt, hey, he's like that in college, he's going to be like that in the pros. And if he's like that in college and he's like that in the pros, he's going to be worse for it in the pros. I never believed that because of the fact that I saw what he did against the best. And there was just something about him that we have all seen now, or everybody else, including this ESPN group, that they bought in completely now that they didn't buy in before. Everybody wants to buy in about what a great quarterback Deshaun Watson is now. Well, where were you months ago? I didn't hear anything about Deshaun Watson getting dropped in the draft and Mitch Trubisky being rated ahead of him because of any white-black thing. Oh, by the way, Baker Mayfield. I love what Baker Mayfield did. I love it. I love it because the more Baker Mayfield. Now, look, I don't want to see him do anything more crazy, but I buy into his explanation. I have no problem with it. And you know why I have no problem with what Baker Mayfield did, and the fact that he's been a lot more normal than Johnny Manziel, is because I've done a lot of crazy things when I was young. And a lot of guys have done a lot of crazy things when they were younger and turned into perfectly normal people. And grabbing a crotch, I'm sorry, but yeah, he can't be my quarterback. Yeah, I'll draft that one because he grabbed his crotch in that game. All right, fine. I mean, I got guys. I tweeted out today. I got guys over at CBS Sportsline that are reading Lamar Jackson as the top quarterback in the draft. I mean, what? Really? Are you? Do you? What? I mean, I've never even bought into the fact that Lamar Jackson should have been the Heisman winner last year. I got guys even wondering why, shouldn't Lamar Jackson be considered more for the Heisman this year? What are these people looking at? Seriously, what are they looking at? I don't get it. I don't understand it. But but okay, that's what you want to believe. Then you keep believing that stuff. Because when I said it many times, when Lamar Jackson had the game in his hands and an opportunity mano a mano with Deshaun Watson and Clemson in that game early last season, did he close the deal like Deshaun Watson has in those big spots? No, he didn't. And when has Lamar Jackson closed the deal in big spots against the best teams? Rarely. And this is a guy that some people want to keep Heisman this, and now top quarterback prospect? What are they looking at? College is not the pros. Are you insane? Lamar Jackson? I don't even know if Lamar Jackson should be a what? Third, fourth round draft pick, let alone top quarterback prospect. So, and then I told you the other day about the New York Riders, which I couldn't, or one New York Rider, which I couldn't have been more happier about, talking about how the Jets need to go out and make sure they get at least Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, or did they put in? No. Oh, Sam Darnold. So even to this point in time, which is, and now this is why the crotch thing is really good, because everybody who's just looking at, they look at Baker Mayfield, and what they're seeing is they're seeing what they've seen before in the Big 12 and the spread and high octane offenses, and it's probably just Bryce Petty or something, even though we still don't know what Bryce Petty is. I see all these terrible quarterbacks that get a shot to play, and Bryce Petty sitting on the bench, waiting behind a 38-year-old quarterback. I'm sorry, but Bryce Petty ain't as bad as Nathan Peterman, ain't as bad as Brett Hundley. Okay? He is not. Or CJ Beathard. Now, I'm not saying that Beathard and Peterman can't get better, but the point is where these guys are right now in their careers, all of them, Petty's better than. And he's got to sit behind Josh McCown. So Baker Mayfield, because he's in some Big 12 gimmicky offense and because he likes to grab his crotch on Saturdays, apparently, there's the height thing too. He'll be lucky to be in the first round. Good. Thank you. Excellent. Perfect. Great. Because the only team that I'm concerned about is my team. The only evaluator I'm concerned about is mine. Okay, so as long as my guy, McCagnon, isn't that dumb, and my guy sees through it, and he can just sit wherever he is, the 10th pick, the 12th pick, the 8th pick, and he can just sit there while everybody goes gaga goo ga over Josh Allen and Josh Rosen, and maybe even Mason Rudolph, and who knows, maybe there's some sick, crazy nut out there with Lamar Jackson. Great, do it. This way my team doesn't have to move up anywhere to get anybody. They could just sit there and get Mayfield. So apparently Mayfield may not play in the game. Well, he probably will, but he won't start this week. But that's okay because Kyler Murray, watch out, because with that system and with Lincoln Riley running the show at Oklahoma, Kyler Murray is going to be just fine. Kyler Murray is going to have a very nice career at Oklahoma. Now, he's not Baker Mayfield. He doesn't have the arm. He's not an NFL quarterback, but he's a very athletic kid, and he'll be just fine. Besides, Oklahoma doesn't need the game. And West Virginia isn't starting their first quarterback, Will Grier. Will Grier broke his finger, so Chris Chuganoff is going to start for West Virginia. So it doesn't really matter. I wouldn't care. I'm not worried about it if I'm an Oklahoma fan. I'm sure they're not. But anyway, it's going to be Oklahoma and more than likely TCU. I mean, the fact that TCU could probably still lose to Baylor and get to the Big 12 championship game, I think it's reasonable to say that we're going to see TCU and Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, remember last week we were talking about the Kenny Hill situation, and we just didn't know what to think about Sean Robinson, top prospect for TCU. Maybe this is going to be better for them. Well, nah, I don't think so. He's got a long way to go. And I'm sorry, but he's not ready. He did not look that good against the Texas Tech defense. So, look, this kid could have a really nice career, but there's no way I see Sean Robinson and TCU beating Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship game. So Oklahoma is looking really good right now, as I kind of figured that they would for that Final Four spot. And that's and so the big game anyway to keep an eye on in the Big 12 this week is the Baylor TCU game. Okay, now in the Big 10, Wisconsin did what I thought they would do and beat Michigan, and so they're one step closer. And I still believe that they are going to beat Ohio State. I said that last week, and I'm saying it again this week, and I'll say it again next week after they beat Minnesota. That they will beat Ohio State in the Big 10 championship game. Especially because I believe that they're going to be a nice little underdog, 7 to 10 points probably, and I kind of like exactly where that's setting up. Ohio State's, by the way, an 11-point favorite at Michigan, and I had to hear some people say that, oh, it was just a coincidence, or the reason that Michigan lost the game the way that they did had nothing to do with Brandon Peters' injury. See, these are the same people who just know nothing about the sport. They know nothing about quarterbacks. They know nothing about the real emotion of the game, the confidence the players and teams have on certain individuals, especially the quarterback. And when all of a sudden, the quarterback that comes in that because you understand it, this guy is your quarterback. He's the guy that should have been there all along. He's a guy you can believe in. He's a guy that all of a sudden, Michigan started getting some confidence going. They're building something here. He's the guy that's probably going to lead us. And if it's not him, then it's going to be Dylan McCaffrey. But we're headed in the right direction. No more O'Korn, and we're moving forward. And they're battling. Look, it wasn't pretty, but we knew it wasn't going to be pretty. These are the two best defenses going up against each other. It was going to be ugly like this. But Peters didn't have it. It wasn't like he was playing poor. So what happens? He gets a concussion. As soon as he gets the concussion, see, Wisconsin took the lead, then they get a concussion. And then Wisconsin goes on and scores 10 more points, and they win easily. But keep in mind, at that point, Wisconsin had a punt return touchdown. And then the second touchdown was set up on like a 40-yard bomb, 50-yard bomb. One pass play sets up the second touchdown and a punt return. So Wisconsin's offense had done nothing. And so Peters goes down, and all of a sudden, even when O'Korn was throwing the ball in the general direction of the Michigan players, they kept dropping the pass. All of a sudden, Michigan receivers couldn't catch anything. All of a sudden, Michigan's offense could do nothing. And the defense couldn't stop Wisconsin all of a sudden. All of a sudden, they couldn't stop Wisconsin. And some people want you to believe that was because Wisconsin was on the verge anyway of just, they were just on the verge. Oh, really? That's what it was. It was just, they were just on the verge. That it was just a coincidence that as soon as Peters went out, that it didn't deflate the team at all to see O'Korn coming back in. No, it had nothing to do with that. Even though all the time I got to hear about the analysts on TV talking about, oh, well, what if you start this guy, just like Tyrod Taylor? Oh, if you can't start Nate Peterman next week, look at what it'll do to the locker room. I had to hear it with the whole Ryan Fitzpatrick thing a couple years ago. You can't not start Ryan Fitzpatrick. Look what it'll do to the locker room. Look what it'll do to the players. Well, what do you think it does then to the players when the quarterback gets hurt and John O'Korn's got to step back on the field? You don't think that psychologically that damages these guys? Where all of it, I know, I played sports. I didn't play at that level, but anybody that plays sports knows. You know, even when you played pickup with your friends, basketball, football, whatever it was. If let's say it was football, let's say your buddy had he had to go home or something, and you were competing and it was fun, and then he had to go home, and then the only other guy that was going to be a quarterback was some guy that stunk. You tell me, oh my God, we all felt that way. They felt that way. That's why they got beat up in the end. Now, if Michigan is going to have a chance against Ohio State, the only way it's going to happen is Brandon Peters has got to get back on that field, or, God, I can't believe I'm saying this, Wilton Speight has to come back. And I say that because there's just no way they're winning with O'Korn. See, with Speight, if he does come back, even if it's just for a game, and I hope he doesn't, because if he comes back and they do beat Ohio State somehow, even if he just goes like 7 of 10, with a touchdown, he'll be relevant with the program next year. So I that's costly. But if the best case scenario for Michigan fans like me is that Peters can come back and play, and then he starts the game, and their defense does their job. Peters does a good job, and because I know they can beat Ohio State, but chances are they won't. I don't think they will anyway. But I think Wisconsin will. And that's the most important thing right now for the college football landscape. And that's the reason why I think Wisconsin is going to end up in the playoffs. In the ACC, so we know it's Miami and Clemson. Miami started playing like they had a month ago. We thought that was a possibility, but Kurt Bankert's the one that you should be talking about, not Lamar Jackson. I'd rather have Kurt Bankert. I would draft Kurt Bankert 10 times out of 10 than Lamar Jackson, okay? But Kurt Bankert had a solid game, great game, 4 touchdowns. Virginia outplayed Miami. That's all it was. Miami is very lucky to win that game. If Virginia had played a good game, they didn't have to play a perfect game. They just had to play a good game where they didn't just give the game away. That's what they did. They gave the game away. They did some dumb things, but see, this is the thing with Miami. You don't know if once again that's just Miami. They're gonna take advantage. That's what they've done all year. And even when they play Clemson in a couple of weeks, that is still a game they could win. But let's see them get by Pittsburgh first. I said this a few weeks ago. The way Miami plays, you can't necessarily think that these games that look easy on paper are going to be easy. The first one wasn't. Now they got to go to Pittsburgh on Friday. I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy. They're going to be, especially now that they're on the road, they're not going to have that crowd behind them, which has been very important for the last month. Now they go on the road, and this Pittsburgh team, look, they played tough last week against Virginia Tech. So, and they've been playing a lot better over the last 4 or 5 weeks than they did to start the season. So just, don't think Miami is there yet. But I'm still leaning towards Miami at this point to beat Clemson, but we still have a couple of weeks to go because I don't even think, I'm still looking at this Clemson game and going, all right, let's see what happens with Clemson in South Carolina. I think South Carolina has been dismissed way too often this year. Look, the injuries have killed South Carolina, no question about it. But it's a rivalry game. They got destroyed last year, South Carolina. I could see South Carolina hanging in there with Clemson. Clemson's got to play better offensively. Bryant's got to play better. This could be a close football game. Look, I just, the way this season has gone, I would not put Clemson and Miami into a whoever wins is in the playoff scenario just yet. Uh, you know, could either Miami or Clemson lose this week? Yes, and it wouldn't shock me. Moving on to the let's go to the Pac-12. This is real easy, and that is if Washington State beats Washington, which I believe they will. I love the fact they're a 9-point dog, by the way. If Washington State beats Washington, Washington State wins the division. We'll see Washington State USC rematch. If Washington beats Washington State, then Stanford will play USC in the Pac-12 championship game. Speaking of USC, boy, Josh Rosen looked so much better than Sam Darnold. You know, Dan Shonka has talked about this since day one at Sam Darnold, and this was another reason why I said what I said before the season began about how everybody was crazy to think about tanking for Sam Darnold. It was dumb to say it, and who was right to say that? Because Sam Darnold, see, there are even some people that after watching Sam Darnold play like this year are crazy and psychotic enough to think, not even to think that he may be the first pick, but to put him atop their draft boards, like as some sort of what are you looking at between Rosen and Darnold that would lead you to believe that Sam Darnold should be picked over Josh Rosen? I'm sorry. If you want no further proof that Rosen's better than Darnold right now, then I don't know what you're looking at. Now, another, by the way, Jordan Lashley looked awfully good too, the receiver for UCLA. You know, he should be moving up the draft boards too. You know, he's not going to be a top player, but he's definitely a player to watch. I can't wait to see his 40 time, because if he has a good 40 time, watch out for this kid. By the way, Jim Moore is fired. Shocker. Told you the guy should have been fired a couple of years ago. I told you that Butch Jones should have been fired a couple of years ago. These schools just wait so long, but I guess better late than never. Chip Kelly, you know, I can see Chip Kelly going to either UCLA or Florida. I'd tell you the truth, I'd kind of be surprised if he did not land at one of those two jobs, and maybe even Tennessee. Those are good jobs, and he should land at one of those spots. There's no reason in the world for me to believe that Chip Kelly won't be a really good college coach again. Sticking also in college with the SEC, and we know Alabama-Auburn is the big one on Saturday. Alabama favored by 4. It's about what we thought it was going to be. You know we like Auburn in this game. Nothing that we saw on Saturday is going to change my mind. Those games meant nothing. So we like Auburn. And we are right now still leaning towards Auburn, especially with Georgia did nothing to change my mind. I said I wanted to see Georgia. Let's open it up for Fromm. Let's get him more pass attempts. Let him throw the ball 25 times. Let's get his confidence going. Let's see if when they play an Alabama or an Auburn in the SEC championship game, if their defenses stop the running game, that Fromm will be able to beat them with the passing game, which he didn't in the first game, Auburn game. What did they do? 14 pass attempts, 9 of 14, 123 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Same thing what we've seen from Fromm all year. They did not take advantage of the fact that they were playing a weak team and just go ahead and open up the playbook a little bit more. Let's pass the ball some more. No, we've got to get another 5 rushing touchdowns combined from Chubb and Michelle. I don't understand why they're doing that. I'm sorry. There's nothing about that game on Saturday that leads me to believe that Georgia's ready to win the big one now offensively. I'm sorry. They're not. Now, maybe if they get to play Alabama, they'll have a shot, because I'm not sold on Alabama being able to stop Georgia's running game the way Auburn did. And as long as Georgia can run the ball, they're going to have a shot. But I'm telling you, they better be rooting for Alabama. I can't believe that I would even be saying that, or that Georgia would actually be thinking it, but they should be. They should be rooting for Alabama. Because with Hamilton out for the year, it looks like you can run on Alabama. But I like Auburn. not just for the game, but for the national championship. They're 9-1. I mean, I've already parlayed some futures, Eagles and Auburn to win the national championship and the Super Bowl. We'll get to the Eagles in just a minute. And by the way, I don't think Georgia's a lock this week either at Georgia Tech. The last 4 games in that series has been decided by a total of 20 points. 2 of those games have gone to overtime, and both teams have won twice. And Georgia Tech, by the way, because they lost to Duke, they need to win for bowl eligibility. That game is going to be close. And how will Georgia handle the pressure? And it's on the road. I'm telling you right now, if the Georgia-Kentucky game was on the road, I bet you that game would have went down to the wire. I really believe it. And so now that this one's on the road, this game is going down to the wire. I don't think Georgia's in a good spot right now. I just don't. South Florida, Central Florida, we've been waiting for this game in the AAC all season. We finally get it. Central Florida favored by 11. It's a big spread, but we've liked Central Florida since day one to win the championship, and we're going to stick with Central Florida to win the game, to win the East, and then to beat Memphis in the championship game, even though we do like Memphis, and they've been on a nice little run now, and they should be commended for that. So, and then let's see. And then moving on for the other conferences, Conference USA, it's going to be Florida Atlantic and North Texas in the Conference USA championship game. By the way, tomorrow we will have Patrick McGee on to talk Conference USA football. So today, available on demand, we had our interview with John Wagner talking MAC football. So we are going to talk about the Conference USA, their season, their top prospects to keep an eye on, and an early look at the FAU North Texas championship game. And then in case you didn't listen to the interview from earlier today, bottom line is if Akron beats Kent State tomorrow, which it is a rivalry game, if they beat Kent State tomorrow, Akron will play Toledo in the championship game as long as Toledo beats Western Michigan. If Toledo loses to Western Michigan, Northern Illinois can get in by beating Central Michigan later this week. And Ohio gets in if Akron loses to Kent State, and then Ohio wins their game, which we would think Ohio. Well, actually, the Ohio game is not a gimme. Actually, yeah, that because Ohio could lose too. Ohio's playing at Buffalo, and Buffalo needs a game for bowl eligibility. Bottom line is that there's more than both Akron and Toledo can actually get to the championship game even if they lose, because Northern Illinois and Ohio are not playing easy games. Mountain West, we get the crazy Fresno State Boise State matchup because Boise is playing Fresno this week in Fresno, and the game means nothing except rivalry and pride and all that, because Fresno will play Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. So it's a very weird scenario in the Mountain West. And in the Sun Belt, there's still 4 teams with 1 loss: Troy, Arkansas State, Georgia State, and Appalachian State. So still too early to talk about that. Okay, in the NFL, so yeah, Denver fires Mike McCoy. I don't understand that. I don't. John Elway is a smart guy, and I don't know what he's doing here. Maybe he's embarrassed by the decision to hire Vance Joseph, and he's willing to let Vance make some moves, and he's okay with it. And then they're going to go on and they're going to evaluate the team without McCoy. And if they still looked in after, maybe they should fire the special teams coach, which they should. And then eventually Elway will realize, okay, I tried everything else. Look, if I'm a fan of opposing Denver Broncos teams, go ahead and keep Vance Joseph because they hired the wrong guy and he should be fired, but whatever. Go ahead and fire Mike McCoy. We'll see what the Paxton Lynch should be playing right now. We'll see if he gets in there or not. Bad news for New Orleans. They come back at the big win against Washington when it looked like they were done. But the Saints, bad news to hear that Alex Okafor is out with an Achilles. That is a bad blow. I've said this since the preseason. The reason why I like the Saints as a nice sleeper is because, and the reason I bought into their defense, and Okafor was part of it. Okafor has played very well for New Orleans. He gave them another pass rusher to go along with Cam Jordan. Missing him is going to hurt them big time. And even Lattimore was banged up in the game. You got to watch out with the Saints because Lattimore's got an injury history, which is the reason I was concerned about taking him so high. It had nothing to do with his talent; it had to do with his injury history. So they got to keep Lattimore healthy because if with Okafor out now, if anything would happen to Lattimore, they're done. They're back to being the defense they kind of were almost, and forget it. They'll still potentially be a playoff team, but their chances of winning a Super Bowl really do hurt when Okafor goes down. That's a blow. Uh, as I said before, are we done now with Case Keenum is having to look over his shoulder? I actually honestly believe that part of the reason why Case Keenum hasn't been sold yet as a starter is because of the way he looks. I don't know if you notice, but I don't know if it's his shoulder pads or what it is, but he kind of looks like, I don't know, like Joe Cap or something. It kind of looks like one of these quarterbacks that, some quarterbacks when they put on their uniform and their shoulder pads and their helmet, they just look like they're uncomfortable looking. Like I don't know, like their bodies are not designed right. They don't have like that really perfect quarterback look. That's Case Keenum. He doesn't look like I'm sorry, and he's white, but he just doesn't look like he fits normally into his uniform. I don't know what it is. I was looking at him yesterday, like real close. Is he wearing different shoulder pads, or what is it about his body that he just looks weird? I don't know. I just think maybe because if you don't think look has anything to do, appearance has anything to do with people getting specific jobs in life, then you're not paying attention. And don't think it doesn't happen in the NFL as well. So, I mean, look at these guys who are going nuts about racism. So, I don't look. I don't know. I can't explain it, but right now there's just no way Teddy Bridgewater can play. There's just no way. I mean, Case Keenum would have to play so bad for the next couple of weeks, and I just don't see that happening. I mean, that's it. I mean, Case Keenum's the starting quarterback for Minnesota. Now, do I think Minnesota's going to win the Super Bowl? No, I do not. Are they? Because I don't even think they're going to be Philadelphia. But he's their quarterback, and that's just going to be the deal. And now, where do they go from here? Does he come back next year? I don't know. I mean, tell you the truth, I doubt it, because I would think that unless they do go to the Super Bowl and they lose a close game, and they're we got to bring him back. But anything short of that, and I could see the Vikings going, okay, Bridgewater's our guy. And maybe another team wants to come in here and give Keenum, whatever, $50 million, let them. And because you don't think that there are starved quarterback teams out there that'll give Case Keenum some money, yeah, but the Vikings probably will say, fine, go ahead, we got Bridgewater. Kansas City, they're done. I said this after they lost their first game, by the way, in case you don't recall. I said this is I was reminded about why they always lose in the playoffs, and ever since, they just haven't really been the same. This is just. Remember, I've said I say this a lot to remind everybody about how Andy Reid offenses look. That when everything goes well with an Andy Reid offense, because he always has all these little gadget plays, and they have to run these they run these shovel passes, and they have all these little speed guys, and they run this play and that play, and he always gets cute this way and cute that way. And when it's running well and they're going well for weeks, it looks like the best offense in football. But when it doesn't go well, when all of a sudden there's like a chink in the armor, even though you can't figure out where the chink is, then it's really off, and it can look ugly, and it's off, and it looks ugly. And this is the whole reason why they moved up and drafted Mahomes, and this is the whole reason why Mahomes will be the starting quarterback next year. All right, because it's also Alex Smith. I'm sorry, but some of the throws he makes, some of the decisions he makes, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I really don't. He throws the ball way too much to Travis Kelce too. I mean, and he's one of these quarterbacks. Is very similar to Josh McCown in a way. He doesn't want to throw the ball deep. He's got Tyreek Hill, who is a blazer and can easily get past everybody deep, and he won't throw the ball deep to him. He constantly throws the ball to Travis Kelce, who's a good player, but he just constantly throws the ball to him. And then you got the Eagles, who once again demonstrated last night why They are the best team in the NFC, and why, if anybody's going to beat the Patriots, they will, and why I think they're going to. Because yeah, as good as the Patriots have been playing better now, Patriots do what they always do. You know, it's not that their defense is like, oh wow, they got a great defense again, because they don't. It's that they're so better coached than every other team, and Tom Brady is just so freaking awesome that it's like it's almost like baseball. You know how teams are supposed to win in a baseball season over 162 games because you know you do this and you do that, and if you have this, that, and that, then over a 62 game season, the best teams will be the best teams. But like a team like the Dodgers, they can do certain things in the regular season and destroy everybody, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a good postseason team. Well, with the Patriots, that's the reason. That's what I'm saying here is that I don't think that you get them into the postseason necessarily means that they're going to just beat the best teams. See, they're going to roll over the teams that have inferior coaching and personnel, but get them into the postseason if they gotta, especially if they got, let's say if they have to be, I would say, well, yeah, actually, it's probably only Pittsburgh, which they'll beat. Because I still, even though Baltimore won again, I don't know. I mean, I need to see more out of Baltimore myself. As much as I still believe that there's a team and an organization that can beat the Patriots, as I said last year, I'll still say I'll say it again this year, possibly it's Baltimore. But I need to still see more from Baltimore. But right now, it's looking like they're just so much better than everybody, and Brady's so much better that okay, look, they'll give up yardage and points when they have to play the Steelers because their defense isn't that great. Look at last year. Last year's defense was much better than this year's defense, and Atlanta tore them up until they got conservative. All right, it's like Alabama's defense. They kill everybody, but then you get them and play Deshaun Watson, and he destroys them. So I've seen this before. The regular season is one thing, get them into the postseason is another. But look, there just aren't a lot of good teams, especially in the AFC. But the Eagles, they're playing great. They've got everything going for them, and that's a team that can beat the Patriots. The question is, are the Eagles, do they need another year? Do they need some playoff seasoning? Who knows? We'll see. In the season, we still got a little ways to go here. So you got to avoid injuries and all that other stuff. But Eagles are still my pick to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And we'll see whether or not that holds true. But I still love the fact that they were 5-1 last week. And after they killed the Cowboys, I don't know what that's going to do. Not that the Cowboys or anybody should be getting like, oh, that was an impressive win. Okay, so that'll do it for the show. Now, again, tomorrow we've got our 2 o'clock show. We'll talk Conference USA football on the OFN meeting room. What else we got this week? We got our college football preview on Wednesday. We have our NFL preview on Friday. And what else do we have? We've got some, and then we'll probably have a couple more interviews as always that I just haven't booked yet. So that'll be coming up here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network for the rest of the week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN, and go to Ourlads.com for the best depth charts in the industry for both the NFL and college football. So thanks for tuning in to OFN Weekend Review here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. We'll see you next time. Rise up and take the power back. It's time. A fat cat's had a heart attack.